The envelope nobody wanted. At my grandfather's will reading, every relative walked in smiling like they had already won. My aunt wore diamonds. My cousins whispered about vacations. My older sister, Marissa, kept checking her reflection in her phone, smiling like the world belonged to her. And me? I sat at the end of the long wooden table, wearing the same black dress I had worn to Grandpa's funeral. I wasn't expecting anything. Grandpa and I had been close when I was little, but after my parents split, my family slowly pushed me to the outside. I became the quiet one, the forgotten one, the one they invited only because it looked bad if they didn't. The lawyer, Mr. Ellison, opened the first folder. To Marissa, I leave $2 million. My sister gasped, then covered her mouth like she was shocked. But I saw the smile behind her fingers. To my son Robert, I leave the lake house. My uncle laughed softly. To my daughter Elaine, I leave my investment account. One by one, everyone got something huge. Then Mr. Ellison looked at me. His face changed. He didn't smile. He didn't announce millions. He slid a small yellow envelope across the table.
My name was written on it.
Inside was not a check. It was a phone number. The room went silent for 1 second. Then Marissa laughed. Must be for some shelter, she said. Everyone laughed with her. But Mr. Ellison didn't laugh. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Call it when you're alone." That was the moment I knew something was wrong. The call that changed everything. I walked out of the lawyer's office with my hands shaking. Behind me, my family was still celebrating. Marissa brushed past me and said, "Don't spend it all in one place." I didn't answer. I drove to a small cafe 2 streets away, sat in the corner, and stared at the number. My heart was beating so loudly I could barely hear the coffee machine. Why would Grandpa leave me a phone number? Why would the lawyer look scared? Finally, I called. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then an older man answered. For a moment he said nothing. Then he spoke in a low voice. "I've been waiting for your call, heir." I froze. "Who is this?" I asked. "My name is Thomas Vale. I handled your grandfather's private trust." Private trust? I almost laughed because it sounded impossible. "My family just inherited everything," I said. "I got a phone number." "No," Thomas said calmly. "They inherited what your grandfather wanted them to fight over." My mouth went dry. What does that mean? It means your grandfather knew who they were. And he knew what they did to you. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. Thomas continued. "Your grandfather left you the real estate company, the main estate, and controlling rights to the family foundation." I couldn't breathe. "That can't be true." "It is true," he said. "But there is something else. Your family already tried to hide it." That sentence hit me harder than anything, because suddenly, all their smiles made sense. They didn't think I got nothing. They thought they had successfully buried what I was meant to receive. Grandpa's hidden letter. Thomas told me to come to his office the next morning. I didn't sleep that night. Every memory of my family came back. The birthdays they forgot. The dinners where I sat alone. The way Marissa always made me feel small. But Grandpa had always been different. He used to tell me, "Kind people are not weak, Emma. They're just waiting for the right moment to stand." The next morning, Thomas handed me a sealed letter. It was from Grandpa. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dear Emma," it began. "If you are reading this, then they did exactly what I expected." I covered my mouth. The letter explained everything. Grandpa knew my family had been taking money from his company for years. He knew Marissa had lied about me, telling him I only came around for money. He knew my uncle had tried to pressure him into changing the will. But Grandpa didn't confront them. He watched. He collected proof. And then he made a plan. He left them big gifts on purpose, enough to make them confident. But the true power, the company, the estate, the voting rights, and the final legal control had been placed in a trust under my name. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote, "Let them laugh first. Then let the truth speak." I cried quietly in that office. Not because of the money, because for the first time in years I felt seen. Grandpa had known. He had believed me. And now he had left me a choice. Stay silent forever, or finally stand up. The family dinner trap. Thomas warned me not to confront them too soon. They're expecting you to disappear, he said. Let them think they won. So I waited. 3 days later, Marissa invited me to a family dinner. I knew it wasn't kindness. I went anyway. The restaurant was expensive. Everyone was dressed like they were celebrating a victory. Marissa raised her glass and said, "To Grandpa, and to new beginnings." Then she looked at me. "Emma, did your phone number help you find a job?" The table laughed again. I smiled softly. "Actually, yes. It helped a lot." My uncle narrowed his eyes. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." The mood shifted. Marissa leaned forward. "Don't act mysterious. Grandpa gave you nothing because he knew you couldn't handle money. That hurt, but this time I didn't break." I looked at her and said, "Maybe Grandpa knew more than you think." Her smile faded. For the first time, she looked nervous. That night, I sent Thomas a message. "I'm ready," he replied. "Then tomorrow we begin." The truth walks in. The next morning, the family gathered again at the lawyer's office. They thought it was about final paperwork. Marissa came in smiling. My uncle looked annoyed. My aunt whispered, "Why is she here?" Mr. Ellison stood at the front of the room. Thomas Vale stood beside him. That was when my family stopped smiling. Thomas placed a thick folder on the table. "This meeting concerns the private trust of Henry Whitmore," he said. Marissa laughed nervously. "Private trust? What private trust?" Thomas looked at me. Then he said, "The trust names Emma Whitmore as the sole controlling heir." Silence. Heavy, beautiful silence. My uncle stood up. "That's impossible." Thomas opened the folder. "Not impossible.
Signed.
Recorded. Verified." Marissa's face turned pale. Mr. Ellison continued. "The assets include Whitmore Holdings, the main estate, several properties, and voting control over the family foundation." My aunt whispered, "No." Then Thomas added the final part. "There is also evidence that several family members attempted to suppress trust documents and mislead the beneficiary." Now nobody looked at me like I was weak. They looked at me like I was the storm they never expected. Marissa's smile breaks. Marissa stood so fast her chair hit the wall. "She doesn't deserve this," she shouted. There it was. The truth behind every fake smile. I looked at her calmly. "Why not?" "Because you left the family." I almost laughed. "You pushed me out."
"No," she snapped.
"You always acted like a victim." I opened Grandpa's letter and placed it on the table. Grandpa didn't think so. Marissa stared at it. Her eyes moved across his handwriting. For once, she had nothing clever to say. Then Thomas played an audio recording Grandpa had left. His voice filled the room. "If Emma is sitting in front of you, then remember this. She was the only one who loved me without asking what she would get." My tears fell, but I didn't wipe them away. Grandpa continued. "To those who laughed at her, enjoy what you were given. But the legacy goes to the one who never tried to steal it." Marissa sat down slowly. Her face was empty. My uncle muttered, "This is unfair." I looked at him and said, "No, this is exactly fair." My revenge was not loud. People think revenge has to be loud. Mine wasn't. I didn't scream. I didn't insult them. I didn't take back the gifts Grandpa left them. I simply made sure they could never touch what belonged to me. Thomas filed the legal protection papers that same week. My uncle was removed from company decisions. My aunt lost access to the foundation accounts. Marissa's attempt to claim part of the estate was denied. And me? I moved into Grandpa's old office. The first day I sat behind his desk, I found a small note taped inside the drawer. "Be kind, but never be blind." I smiled through tears. Months later, Whitmore Holdings opened a scholarship fund for young women who had been pushed aside by their families.
"I named it after Grandpa."
Marissa called me once. She didn't apologize. She only asked if I could help her out. I said, "I hope you find what you need." Then I hung up. Because peace is not always forgiveness. Sometimes peace is closing the door. The lesson Grandpa left behind. A year later, I stood in front of the family estate as the sun set behind the trees. For years, I had believed I was the forgotten one, the unwanted one, the girl with no place at the table. But Grandpa had been watching quietly. He didn't just leave me money. He left me proof that my worth was never decided by people who mocked me. My family smiled because they thought they had won. They laughed because they thought I had lost. But the phone number they called a joke became the key to everything. And that taught me something I will never forget. Sometimes the people who laugh first are the ones hiding the most fear. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the truth. Grandpa's final gift was not revenge. It was justice. And justice didn't need to shout. It only needed one phone call.